Okay. So yesterday in class, this is roughly where we left off. We were talking about how in chapter 10, it's going to teach us how to add decimals. Now, this is actually something that, as we discussed yesterday as well, that you all really already kind of know how to do. The way we get better at this is to make sure that we don't forget to do some really important stuff. Now, yesterday, you were supposed to take down this information right here on the board in front of me, highlight it, star it, make sure you don't forget it, and that piece of information is what, Xander? Important. Always line up decimal. Always line up your decimal. And I said if you can do that, you'll be successful in chapter 10. However, there are a couple of other things that you've got to be careful of, because if you aren't careful, silly mistakes can happen. So I want to take a minute and you grab that paper that I gave back to you a little bit ago that had all those problems on it that you did in NCI Friday. Okay, now when you started on this assignment, I asked most of you, I said, raise your hand if you felt like this was easy. And I had literally almost the whole class raise their hand, because you all felt it was so simple. But now I'm going to follow that and say, how many of you got 100? Notice how we now only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 kids out of 26 got 100. So for something that was so easy, we all should have gotten 100 then. But we didn't. So we have to figure out, why did we not get hundreds? What were the mistakes that we made? And as we know, this is stuff that our kids, you gotta finish up. Our kids in junior high still mess up on. Our kids in 6th grade still mess up on. And it's because when something looks so easy, we don't take our time. And we do things that we know we shouldn't do. How many of you on your paper right now have a correction that I kind of wrote something on there that said, don't forget to carry your 1? Okay, there's 5 people in this room that made what I'm going to call a 2nd grade mistake. In 2nd grade, you were taught how to carry when adding. And some of you in here forgot how to do that. Or if you didn't forget, you didn't show me that you knew how to do that. Because some of you made that mistake multiple times. Let me show you what I mean. So if I had a problem that was like 7.64 plus 2.97, okay? My job in adding this, it looks like a pretty simple problem, because all I have to do is add numbers together. So I was taught way back in 2nd grade that when I add, I start with the place that's at the end. Now that we are learning decimal, what's the name of the place that these digits are sitting, Max? The hundredths. So I'm going to start right now adding my hundredths stuff first. 4 plus 7 is what? 11. So here's the mistake that some of you are making, that 2nd grade mistake. You are putting the 1 down, but you're not carrying the 1 over to the 10th place. It's like your brain, you think, is just going to remember that there's that extra 1 in that row. Well, your brain's not remembering. Because when you got to the 10th place, all you saw was 6 and 9. And so you told me that that was 15. So you put the 5 down. But guess what? You forgot to carry the 1 again. So when your brain got to the 1st place to add, it didn't see that extra 1 up there. And so all it did was add 7 plus 2. And you told me the final answer was 9.51. That's wrong. That's not something I can teach you in 5th grade. By the time you get to me, that stuff is supposed to be mastered. You're supposed to know how to do that, not even think about it. This is easy, this is a piece of cake. But you're not mastering it. And you have to ask yourself why. It's not me, it's not your neighbor, it's you. You have to ask yourself, why am I messing up when I add little numbers together? Is it because you're not showing that extra one? And for some of you, yes, that's what the problem is. So if you know that that's your problem, what are you going to start doing? Showing the one. For any of you that have that little note on your paper from me that says, I drew a little one and I circled it and I put a little arrow to the side and I said, carry your one. If I wrote that on your paper, you need to be aware that that's a second grade mistake you're making. And you must stop making that mistake. Because math is going to get heavier, it's going to get deeper, it's going to get harder. And all the stuff that you have already been taught to do, you still have to do. And you can't forget, just because something looks so easy, you can't forget to do the simple, easy things, like carry the one to the next position. So, any other mistakes that you have on your paper? Does anybody see where maybe you carried your one, but you just added wrong? Does some of you have that? Where I put a circle around like a section of numbers? That's because you just added wrong. 9 plus 6, if I was adding 9 plus 6, what's 9 plus 6, everybody? 15. It always has been 15. It always will be 15. When you are 97 years old, 9 plus 6 will still be 15. So when you say 9 plus 6 is 14, that's wrong. So we're making those mistakes. That's first grade math. So slow down. If you're making those kinds of mistakes, it's probably a speed thing. You're probably trying to go so quick because you're looking at it like it's something that's easy. So if it's a carrying thing, we're going to start carrying, right? If it's an adding thing, we're going to slow down, right? How many of you made any mistakes because you just didn't copy the numbers correctly? Anybody do that? Well, that's good. You did? You had a couple of those? Be careful on that. Because if the problem is 7.64, and I have to work this problem out, so I got to write it into my notebook. If I write 7.46, am I going to get the right answer? No. So that transferring stuff, when you transfer stuff from one place to another, triple check yourself to make sure that the numbers that are there are the numbers you wrote. So, and I hope everybody's hearing me, because this is not part of my lesson today. This is a life lesson. So I'm taking class time to tell you life lessons. Don't do those things. You will be in math class for probably the next 12 years. Okay? So math isn't going away. And you can't make those silly mistakes on some of this stuff. All right? So you have to kind of judge yourself as a student. If you're a student who moves too quick, you're going to teach yourself to slow down. If you're a student who copies wrong, you're going to teach yourself to check yourself over and over and over again. If you're a student who forgets to carry things, you're going to make sure that you carry. And that's how you improve on that. Okay? So for this skill here, always lining up the decimals, if you do all that stuff correctly, this whole chapter will be so easy. Okay? So I want you to take this little baby example down into your notebooks, okay? Write that example, please. And I want you to write it exactly how I have it, going in a line. Write those numbers straight across like a sentence. You might hear me call this like a math sentence. There's a reason I want you to write it like that. Because for your homework tonight, and practice problems that we ever do from a book, or maybe practice problems that you might see on the math test, will have problems written like this in a line. They won't have them stacked up for you like your worksheet does. Because the people who make these books and these tests, they know fifth graders know how to add. But what they think fifth graders don't know how to do is line up decimals. So they're going to give you a problem that's not already lined up. And you're going to have to line it up correctly, then add. So you're going to see it looking like this. So we're going to kind of train our brains. Some of you aren't paying attention, I can tell, because I don't see your eyes. We're going to train our brains to start doing the right thing from the start. And that would be to put the biggest number first. That stuff's not needed. Put it away, please. Clear your chair. Clear your chair. Thank you. All right, so in my problem here, my little baby problem that I got, what's the biggest number? Is 4.24 the biggest number, or is 4.34 the biggest number? Colin.
4.34.
4.34. So let's all take a minute and write on our paper 4.34. We're going to write this directly underneath where we just wrote this little sentence. So, now notice that 4.34 is not the first number listed. How come I can just change the order? Brody.
Because it doesn't have directions on it, it just has a column, so you can like realign it if you want.
Well, you can, but it's not really because there's not directions. There is something that we have learned that told me that I can change the order of my numbers in an adding problem. Lily. But what is that math rule that tells me that I can change the order? Lily? That's the commutative property. Remember we learned those properties? The commutative, the associative, the distributive, the identity. Those properties exist for a reason. Because when we get to stuff like this, it tells me I can change the order of these numbers around. It's not going to hurt me. It's not going to change anything. Because the rule for adding tells me that. Why would I want to put the big number on the top? Brayden. Not really. That's not really why. I mean, it does, yes, but that's not really the reason why.
It's because, like, if you do 2 minus 3 and the 2 is on top of the 3, like, that will, like, make sense.
So I think what you're trying to say is that when we get to subtraction, what number always has to come first? The bigger number. So we're going to train our brain right now, because guess what? In a couple of days, we're going to be subtracting this. So in a couple of days, you have to put the big number on the top. So we might as well start right now learning to do it that way. Because then we're training our brain to do the right thing now. If not, if you let your brain do it the other way around, then when we get to subtraction, guess what your brain's going to do? It's going to do it the wrong way. But if we start learning right now doing it this way, then by the time we get to subtraction, it's going to do it automatically. Okay? Because your brain is a muscle and you can train your muscles to do things you want them to do. So I want my brain muscle to train to put the big number first always. And didn't we already learn how to order decimals?
Yes.
How to put things in order from the biggest one to the smallest one? Yes. Well, this is why. So that now when we see these math problems, we can quickly find the biggest number and put it first. And then we can take the next biggest number and put it next. This one only has two problems. So what number is going to come underneath this one? Carson?
4.24.
4.24. So if I follow what my big star says to do, which is always line up my decimals, I'm going to put my decimal directly underneath the number on top's decimal. And then I'm going to build the digits all around it. Okay? This is what your problem should look like. You haven't done it. All right. Now, if there's anybody in this room who has any kind of difficulty reading your own numbers, you start right now making your numbers something you can read. Okay? This, to me, is not a 6. It's not.
That was like a snitch.
So, but for some kids in 5th grade, they say that's a 6 to them. No, it's not. That is a sideways one with a dot at the bottom. That's not a 6. And so when you start working hard math and you write your 6s this way, your brain's going to quickly look at that and think it's a what? A 1. It's not going to think it's a 6. And then your teacher, who likes to look over your work and check your answers and look over to see where your mistake happened, your teacher's going to see this and think that's a 1. So we need to start improving how we write our numbers. Okay? We also have to improve our spacing. Some of you all write so stinking small, and you squish and crush everything so close together. So instead of writing it all spaced out like this, some of you all literally write things like that. Okay?
I can't see that.
Right, exactly. So guess what? When I'm checking your work and I'm trying to give you some credit for showing me your work, I'm not even gonna waste my time trying to check that. Okay? So, spread things out, space it out, give every digit its area to be in. Is anybody using graph paper? Anybody? Well, I don't see anybody in here currently using it. I had somebody in 5F using it. Graph paper is helpful. If you are somebody who smushes stuff up too much, or maybe you make things so big and wide, you need to kind of improve that. I mean, when you were like first graders or kindergartners, your name like was really big. If you're ever walking to lunch, take time to look at the bulletin boards of the little tiny first graders or kindergartners. They write big. The reason they do that is because they're just learning how to write. You guys shouldn't be writing like that anymore. So I shouldn't see math problems on your paper that have ginormous numbers. I also don't want to see these little tiny, like, fingernail numbers either. Okay? So this is kind of what I'm searching for. If you can do all of that and get it all lined up, you're not going to have any issues adding. What's this add to be? 8.58. If you don't have graph paper, what's the other option I've given you? Addison?
You can turn it sideways that way that there's columns so you don't
You got it. Flip that double on its side if you want. It gives you a space to put every single line. Even the decimal gives its own space. Okay? So the next page I'm going to jump to, you may or you may not need this. This is all just kind of for you to kind of judge yourself. Since this is not really a tough chapter, there are some tips to remember when adding decimals. And for some of you, you're not going to need this because you already do it. But the first tip is going to be to line numbers up in the right places. And notice how I put the word places in a different color. Again, I wanted that word to kind of stand out. So when I'm putting these things in order, my ones places all have to line up. My decimals have to line up. My hundredths have to line up. All that stuff that we took time learning about in chapter 2 about place value, the reason we did all of that is so that we can do it now for these problems. So line up the numbers in the right places. The second tip for success is going to be fill in zeros when they're needed to fill up empty spaces. For some of you, you're going to want to do this. For others of you, you are not. These are just tips. This is not a recipe. This is not something you have to do. But if it makes your life easier doing it, then these are suggestions of things you could do. And when we get to some of our practice problems here in a minute, you'll understand more what number 2 means. Tip number 3. Be careful when adding. Don't forget to carry the 1. Jason, are you getting this in your notes? Doesn't look like it. I just showed a new note. There's no way you can have it yet. Don't forget to carry the 1. For some of you, you always do that, so this isn't even a tip you need. But for those of you who don't, you need to. That's good. There's only one more tip. The last tip, line up digits in the answer with the numbers in the problem. And that's a good tip for everybody.
Pardon the interruption. At this time, zones 1 and 5 will have indoor recess.
Let's
Yeah.
Okay. So again, really, for the majority of you, and that would be like the large bunch of you, tip 1 and tip 4 are necessary. Everybody in this room has to do tip 1 and tip 4, which is line up the digits in their right places and then line up the digits in your answer in their right places. But tip 2 and 3 are kind of all for individual people. So if you're not somebody who forgets to carry your 1, then really you don't even have to worry about tip number 3 because you always do it anyways. And if you're not somebody who really needs to fill in zeros and empty spaces, then you can ignore that. For right now, you probably don't really know what that means. So I'm going to show you what I'm talking about here in a second. Does everybody have these 4 tips? Nope, just 4. So the next page that I'm going to jump to here in just a minute, I kind of thought, what is something that you all are kind of into as kids? Not necessarily my girls as much. Maybe my girls, I don't know. Boys are definitely more video gamers than girls are. But some girls may. So for my next little section of practice, I thought, why don't we do it the way we would do it in video games? So we're going to play in levels. So these are level 1 problems. Okay? In order to get to level 2 and level 3, you have to master level 1, right? On a video game, you're never going to make it to 2 and 3 if you don't get past level 1. So level 1, that was to get somebody else's attention, not yours. To get level 1 problems, that would mean these are probably going to feel a little bit simple. This problem that we just practiced a minute ago on the board, you think that would be considered a level 1 problem? Yes. This would be a level 1 problem. Because all numbers have the same amount of digits. Notice how my first number has 3 digits, and then my next number has 3 digits. So it's easy to line things up when they have the same number of digits. So these are considered level 1 problems. Here's your first level 1 problem. Okay? Notice how I wrote it in a line. Your job is to solve this thing by doing what first? What are we training our brain to put first? Olivia, the biggest number. So out of all 3 of these, Olivia, which is the biggest? 0.9. So that's going to go at the top. What's going to go under 0.9? How? 0.6. And then at the bottom is Xander? 0.4. And if you have it all lined right spaces. All of the zeros are in a nice straight line. Those zeros are sitting in what place? Dominic, what place are those zeros sitting in?
The ones.
The ones place. So all ones should be in a nice straight line, going top to bottom. What about the 4, the 6, and the 9? What place are they in, James?
The 4, the 6, and 9 are in the 10.
They are. So the tenths should all be lined up, and we always know our decimals are lined up. Go solve this on the board for me, please. Shane. Work problem level 1 on the board.
Level 1. The answer wrong.
Wait, I need here. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Shane's working. Go ahead, Shane. Grab a marker and get going. Hallie, what?
Do we have to write it out in the line first?
No, you don't have to. No, I just did it this way because that's how your homework in the book's going to do it. Because remember, they know that you know how to add this stuff, but they don't think you know how to put it in order and how to line it all up. So the biggest thing to master is getting that stuff all lined up right, okay? All right, Shane's working through this. We'll see if you got level 1, number 1 right first. Try another one in level 1 while Shane's working.
I already have level 2 and everything written down.
I'm gonna pick somebody from the current. James, come do number 2 on the board. You don't even have to do it in your notes, do it on the board. Now, James is having to transfer. He's having to transfer information from the board or from the screen to his board. So he's gonna triple check himself to make sure that everything that he is writing is exactly what is listed for him to add. Because I'd hate to go through all that work and then get to the finish line and notice you copied something wrong. James and Shane have mastered level 1. Who else has mastered level 1? Beautiful. So, if you make any mistake, I want you to judge yourself right now. Look at your work. Find your errors. Was it because, look at how nice and spaced and neat these guys did this. Shane has everything lined up. Things aren't crushed. They're nice and big. I can see them. They're not too big because he's not a first grader. They're looking good. They're in order. I see his addition. I see his carry of his 1. Marvelous. So come over here to James. He had a couple of bigger numbers that he was playing with, but still they had the same number of digits. This one had 3 spots. This one had 3 spots. He lined everything up. It's all nice. Everything is in order. His adding is correct. I see his carrying of his 1. Perfect. Looking good. There's actually one more in level 1, but we're going to skip that because once you've got 2 out of the 3, you obviously have mastered level 1. Okay. Let's try level 2. So for level 2, level 2, things might get a little bit bigger, but not too great yet. Okay? So again, we're not changing anything that we have already done. But what we notice is that some of the digits in the problem have more than the other ones. Like 13.79 has 4 numbers. But then the one at the end, 17.362, there's 5 numbers in that one. So now we gotta be a little more careful. In level 2, things get harder. Put your hand down for a moment, please. I want you working through this problem. Everybody at your seats. Nobody's working this one at the board yet. When you finish this problem, put your pencil down. I'll know who's working by pencils I see moving. If your pencil isn't moving, I'm gonna assume you're done. So you're noticing how, like, in level 1, I'm building your confidence. So I'm getting you to realize you can do this. But as level 2 comes along, nothing changes in level 2. Everything, the tips, everything that I taught you is still gonna happen. It's just now we've got numbers that are a little bit bigger. So now we gotta be more careful because this is when an adding mistake can happen. Okay? All right, majority of pencils are down. So Mr. Lowe's gonna actually walk through this first one. There's 2 other problems in level 2, so I'll let somebody else come to the board. But what's the largest number that's gonna go at the top? Biggest number at the top, Brayden.
17
Beautiful. So I'm gonna write 17.362, and notice how I'm spreading things out a little bit. Give myself a space to work in. Okay. What's my next biggest number, Brayden? Okay, so notice 13. I'm going to put my 13 directly underneath my 17. And then I'm going to put my 79 right behind it. Oh, check this out. Empty space. One of the tips that we learned was that when we have an empty space, if we want, what can we add? Really? We can add a 0. Because remember when I taught you in like the very beginning of chapter 2, equivalent decimals? What do equivalent decimals tell us we can do? You can add zeros to the front, to the end, and it's not going to change it. So for some of you, this empty space might bother you. If it does, throw a 0 in there. If it doesn't, just leave it alone. That's just a tip for some people. All right, Brayden, what's the last number I need to put? 4 and 2 tenths. So I'm going to drop my 4, and I'm going to put my 2. Now I see lots of empty spaces here. I see an empty spot here. I see an empty spot here. And I even see one up here in the front. I can add zeros into all those places if you want. Because it's not changing my number at all. And so it's legal. The math police allow you to do that. So now that I have everything lined up, I've filled in my empty spaces. Now it's time to add. So when I add the hundredths position, what do I get? 2. When I add my tenths position, 15. But what do I need to do, Colin? Carry my 1 and show it. Not just tell my brain, carry your 1, show it. Okay? Now, I've got all these to add together, so I'm going to start at the top of the mountain and I'm going to add and move down. Okay? 1 plus 3 is? 4. Plus 7 more? 11. Plus 2 more? 13. Good. I'm going to drop my 3, carry my 1. Let's start at the top of the mountain again. 1 plus 7? 8. Plus 3? 11. Plus 4? 15. Drop my 5, show my 1. Start at the top. What am I left with? Put your decimal back in your answer. If you forgot your decimal, it's wrong. I've got 35.352. Oh, be careful. Okay. So I walked through that one with you. How many people beat that one in level 2? If you didn't, well, where do you go? All right, last one for you to do today. In level 2, tomorrow we'll try some level 3s. Okay. Level 2. Everybody must show me an answer for this one before I can tell you that your class is finished. You just forgot the decimal? As long as you found your mistake, you're learning. That's all I ask you. Okay? Try another one. When you get your answer, you may come to me and show me what you got. But don't go fast, because fast typically means mistakes. And you better make sure you copy things right. You got it, very good. You got it. Your all's homework, for those of you who do have homework tonight. No. Brady, but you can write, or Braden, actually, you're my homework guy, aren't you? Come write your homework down. Braden, it's workbook pages, hang on, everybody freeze for a second. Brady, you need to move, I've already seen yours. Braden, tonight is workbook page 167 and 168. Get over here, boy. You have an added mistake, go check it. Where? Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it.
Was it 167 and 168?
167 and 168. Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. Yeah. Yeah. Nope. Added mistake.
She said yeah.
And you're off by kind of a lot.
She said yeah.
Yep. Yep. Nope, try again, you got an added mistake. You're really close, Kathy. No, go back and slow down. Emily, make sure that you copied everything correctly. Yes. No. Yes. Where? Yes. Xander, have I seen yours?
Yeah, you saw me.
I did? Okay. Yes. Okay, so listen. I won't see you till the end of the day. Your homework assignment is workbook page 167 and 168. Obviously, if we're jumping, Brady, put that away, I'm practicing it spin. Obviously, if we jumped all the way to chapter 10 in our books, we're going to be jumping pretty far down in our workbooks also. So 167 and 168 is your assignment for tonight. So if you have any free time today, I'm giving you a heads up. That's what's due tomorrow. You can use your time to work. Those of you who had mistakes, fix your mistakes, and I still want to see your answer.